Hello, welcome back to the internet. You know, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I figured now seems like it'd be a good time for me to show that I'm thankful for all of my viewers. So I'm going to be going through all of the comments on all of my videos and either giving a heart or a comment onto pretty much all of the comments I've gotten. I have pretty close to about 20,000 comments at this point, so it might take me like over the next month. But by the end of the year, I hope to at least acknowledge most of the comments I've ever gotten. So for you guys who comment all the time, you might get a handful of notifications pretty soon. And maybe some of the old viewers who forgot all about this channel will come back. But anyways, let's start off our stories with allergies are not important to Home Depot. So this happened about 5 years ago, and I haven't been to the Home Depot in question in a long time. So in high school, I was working at the local Home Depot as a head cashier. I kept track of all the active registers and made sure things ran smoothly. I held the position for quite some time, for 1 to 2 years, and enjoyed it pretty well. Customers were nice, and my coworkers were mostly craftsmen and gardeners, all with interesting stories to share. Before we go any further, let me explain something. I'm allergic to nearly every form of pollen. I mean every form. I take allergy medication, but even then, if I am in close proximity to flowers for too long, I will begin to break out in hives and throw up most of the time. So after about 3 months working in the winter, the spring season was upon us. The worst season for my allergies. One day, about 3 of our garden section cashiers called off sick. They are pretty reliable people, so I had no problem finding people to cover for them. As I come to my manager to inform them of position changes, my manager looks at me and says, "You can handle the garden section on your own, can't you?" I inform my manager that I could cover it for at most 15 minutes before my allergies flare up, and I'll have to leave. He states, "We don't have any documents on file that state you are not fit to work in the garden section, so unless you come to me with a doctor's note stating your allergies, I couldn't give less of an F." I don't know who pooped in his Cheerios that morning, but I complied, saying, "I want to be sure of what you were asking. You want me to work in a section which is hazardous to my health, instead of placing equally capable employees in that section?" "Did I stutter?" he said. "Okay, sure," I said. I make my way down to the garden section, and immediately my eyes are stinging. I decide that I'm going to stick it out for my boss's sake, no matter how crappy my service becomes. The first 10 minutes are pretty uneventful, but then a customer asks me about the rash on my arms. "The Home Depot does not care about my allergies," I say, "as I do not have official paperwork." This customer looks extremely concerned, asking for my manager's name. At this point, I was feeling nausea hit me. I threw up in the trash can at the register, turning back to smile, as well as I could, and say, "I work under Bob." The customer reassured me that I'll be okay, and tells me I should head home. Turns out, this guy, Nick, was a higher up at the Home Depot's regional management, and was my boss's boss. So naturally, I comply with the chain of command, and head to the locker room to pack up. As I'm packing, Bob comes in, fuming and cursing, telling me I have no right to leave yet, and that my shift is not over for another 5 hours. I simply say, "Nick told me to go home." His face gets redder as he threatens to fire me, saying I was lying and tells me to go back out. I comply, knowing that I will see Nick on my way out. I pass Nick, still in the orange apron, and he asks me where I'm going. I say that Bob told me to go back to work. Nick's expression goes from concerned to furious, as he takes my apron from me and tells me I'll be paid for the full shift and to go home. I come into work the next day to see that Bob's nameplate has been removed from the office. I ask our HR rep what happened, and apparently, after I left, Nick stormed Bob's office and proceeded to perform an audit on all of his past employees' complaints. This guy had been throwing out complaints for the past 5 years. Needless to say, there was an opening for the store management position, and I was given a week's vacation for my troubles. My satisfaction was huge. You know, after hearing so many malicious compliance stories, I'm a little bit surprised at just how much suffering people will put themselves through just to prove a point to somebody. But I think this one takes the cake. Entitled Parent doesn't know what a service dog is. So me and my friend were working an open house at our college. We were advertising a club we participate in. My friend has a service dog that is still in training, for her severe anxiety. She is normally very friendly when people come over to ask to pet the dog, but eventually it gets annoying after a while. It's important to note, in case you don't know, you should never pet, call out to, or get a service dog's attention, because it can distract them from doing their job. Therefore, they cannot alert their trainers if a trainer is in distress. Distracting a service dog is like pulling someone out of a wheelchair from underneath them. So me, my friend, and the dog were at the open house, trying to get incoming students' attention and possibly recruit new members for their club. The dog was laying down under their table, keeping a close watch on my friend. Many people came up to the table asking to pet the dog. My friend says it's okay at first, but starts to get fed up as many people just care for the dog and weren't interested in the club. Eventually, my friend puts up a sign, telling people to leave the dog alone and ignore her. It's also important to note that due to her anxiety, my friend has a hard time standing up for herself. Everything was going okay until the entitled mom and her kid came. The kid, about 3 or 4 years old, yelled, "Puppy!" and ran towards the dog. My friend froze in place while I stood in front of the dog, somewhat blocking her. I then knelt down and told the kid that the dog was a service dog, and while it would be hard, he needed to ignore her because she was working right now. The kid somewhat understood. He wasn't a bad kid. He was young and probably hadn't seen and didn't know how to act around a service dog. Then came the entitled mom in tow. Surprisingly, she didn't have the typical Karen attributes. She started asking me what I was doing. "What are you saying to my son?" she asked me. "Miss, I was just explaining to your son that the dog here is a service dog, and why he can't pet her." "Well, why can't he pet her?" she said, raising her voice. I then repeated my whole lecture about how to act around a service dog. Also to note, this was an open house for college students, and I never saw the entitled mom's older child. After I am done explaining, the entitled mom starts back up again. "Well, that's a dog, and dogs are meant to be pet," she said in that classic Karen tone. "Miss, if you distract the service dog, that's the same thing as asking someone to get out of their wheelchair." "But your friend can walk fine." "Well, that's not the point," I said, starting to get annoyed. "It's just a dog. It's not like petting it will hurt anyone. Go on, kid, you can pet the dog." To my surprise, the kid looked up at his mother and just stared at her. I guess my lecture got to him better than Karen. The entitled mom started pushing the kid towards the dog, to which he just ran away into the crowd of people in the gym. I assumed to find his older sibling, or maybe another family member. The entitled mom then gave me a death glare, saying something along the lines of, "Now look, you ruined this fair for my kid. I hope you're happy, you lowlife. I bet you just love to ruin children's fun, don't you?" At this point, I'm fed up, and I'm done being nice out of respect. I'm usually very sassy, so I respond to her, "Well, at least it's not my job to suck the life out of everyone. You must be really good at it." I don't know why I said this, but it's what came out of my mouth. The entitled mom then got very red-faced and stomped away. My friend thanked me for sticking up for her, and we had a good laugh. The fair ended with us only recruiting a few members, and the dog got lots of treats and hugs when she was off duty. I later found out that I was reported for inappropriate behavior to the student government, who were in charge of all clubs on campus. But because it's college, there isn't anything they can do, so we all just kinda laughed and moved on with life. I'm not sure why the entitled mom thought this was a fair. Sure, it was an open house, but there was nothing too exciting going on. At least I have a funny story now. Man, these are the type of people that just go anywhere that they have no reason to be, just because they want to start drama, or just because they're bored. Hit my car and try to get away? I'll track you down and make you pay. Double. So my fiancée at the time, now wife, were driving around looking for dresses for her bridesmaids to wear for the wedding. We had been going from place to place looking for something she liked, but no luck. We had just finished leaving David's bridal, and were leaving the plaza. It had been raining a lot, so the roads were slick. As I reached the intersection of where the plaza met the road to turn out, another car came turning in. Unfortunately, he didn't brake soon enough and skidded into the front end of the driver's side. Thankfully, everyone was okay. We got out of our cars and looked at the damage. His car, of course, was completely unharmed, and mine had a minor dent. He looked about 45-ish and had his son in the car with him. We exchanged names and phone numbers. He let me know he was on the way to work, and I told him we were just wedding shopping. I was 22 at the time and very naive as to what to do in case of an accident. He told me that we both seemed pretty busy, and that we should just handle it ourselves since we were both busy. We didn't call the police, my mistake, and he told me to get the damage looked at to see what it would cost. I took the car in 2 days later, and they quoted me $1,100 for the bumper to be replaced. I texted him, and he told me he will be getting scholarships in 2 months, when he goes back to school, and he would be able to pay me in cash then. I, again naively, told him that'd be fine. A week later, I followed up with him about another estimate I got, which was lower than the original, $900. But I got no response. I texted him again and again for the next few days, and nothing. At this point, I realized he had bailed. I came up with a plan to find him. All I had was his name, a now useless phone number, and a general area of where he worked. I searched for him on Facebook, and was pretty sure I found him. I searched under his family members, and saw what looked to be like his son. My soon-to-be sister-in-law was 16, and about the same age as his son. I decided to go full-on sleuth and go undercover. I used her Facebook and changed her last name to match theirs. I then messaged the son and told him that I thought we might be cousins. I asked him some questions about his dad, like his name and his job, and told him that my mom said I have an uncle down there by that name, and worked at this guitar shop. He answered yes, and that was his dad's name, and told me the name of the place where his dad worked. I was so relieved I was making progress. The next day I drove back up near the accident and found where this man worked. I found his car and took pictures of his license plate. I then took all of the info I had and went to the courthouse. I filled out paperwork and handed it to the clerk. The clerk told me they could either mail the form to his work address, or if I paid $25, I could have an officer hand-deliver it. Of course I paid the $25 just to embarrass him at his place of work. A few weeks later, we were summoned to the court to see if we could work things out before going to an actual hearing. He showed up, and we sat down with the mediator. She explained everything to all of us. I told him I didn't want to do this, but he stopped responding. He replied that his phone was stolen, so he had to get a new one. In my mind, a phone being stolen doesn't equal changing your phone number. I knew he was lying. The moderator asked him to step outside. She talked to us and told us not to trust him because his story didn't make sense. The mediator invited him back inside, and we read over the terms I listed in the court documents. He was to pay $2,400. I charged him the original replacement cost, gas from driving back and forth, my time for doing all this work, and extra just for being an a-hole. He said he would pay, and didn't like that I went to his job and took pictures of his car. I replied I didn't like that he hit my car. A few months later, he paid the full amount in cash and had to pay for our court costs as well. I sold the damaged car and took the cash he gave me to buy another car fully in cash. All in all, I benefited from it, but the next time I'll just call the cops and save myself the headache. Wow, catfishing your way into a very sneaky revenge? That's actually pretty impressive. It's kind of funny that, like, if you catfish somebody, it's seen as completely negative and something you should never do. But if you get to do it to catch somebody who did something bad, then it's like, okay, cool, that's fine. I mean, there is a show called To Catch a Predator, if you know what I'm saying. Well, now we get some more work-related stories from the question, Human Resources Employees, what are your best HR nightmare stories? I had one employee submit a form to increase her own salary. She also forged her manager's signature. Like, for real? Hey, I mean, might as well give it a shot, what could go wrong? I saw a guy blatantly lie in his recruitment form, watching him fill it out in front of me. It was total bollocks. Apparently he was the 15th in line to the throne, went to Eton, studied at Oxford, and served in the army for 9 years after training at Sandhurst. Not bad for a 21-year-old, who had in fact spent 3 years in a young offenders institute, battling a drug problem. Man, some of these people just have all the confidence in the world. My job is a constant HR nightmare. My boss has slept with coworker A, coworker A is married to coworker B, coworker B and A have been married, unhappily, for 10 years or something now. B has no idea, even though B invites boss over for dinner once every other week. The boss is now dating new coworker, my best friend, and has already gifted her $2,000, despite another coworker suffering from cancer and barely being able to pay the bills when she was still working. My other boss, who owns the lesser half of the company, has called me a narcissist in a meeting, told me literally, there is no such thing as business ethics. That's barely the past couple months, been there for 4 years. Sorry, not HR, we don't have one. I mean, think about how many people you run into that are just not really the greatest people. I mean, there's so many jerks out there, there's so many, scumbags, and it's not all that realistic to expect that these people become very civilized and perfect just because they're on a job. So of course there's going to be so many workplaces filled with people like this. I came into work early for a morning shift, working in an industrial lab. Heard noises from the back corner of the office portion of the building, but can't make out what they are because of distortion. Head that way to see what was going on, as I was the only one there, or so I thought, at 3 a.m. I see my lab manager screwing the district manager, her boss, while the HR rep for the district is sitting there, enjoying the view. I noped and went back into the lab and tried to forget what happened. Some workplaces are just more exciting than others, I guess. I'm on the HR team that supports a wide variety of US cities for our company, including our colorful Florida locations. This is my best story I heard. We had some woman trying to avoid doing work by sitting out in her car in the parking lot. While she was hiding out there, she needed to use the restroom. Well, instead of going back inside, or doing literally anything else, she decides to pee out her car window. Even though I am also a woman, I was impressed and disgusted by the physics behind this feat. She had stuck her bare butt outside the window and just went for it. Unbeknownst to her, her male coworker had arrived at work late due to an appointment. He drove past to find a parking spot as this was happening, and got a full view. He then reported the incident to us. One of our HR people had to investigate this, and sure enough, parking lot cameras could corroborate his story. Our HR person confronted the woman. Her response, "Well, how did he know it was me? It could have been anyone." We thought, okay, fair enough. The cameras aren't CSI grade zoom, so we only saw the butt part. It was harder to completely identify the face, so we went back to the male peer and asked how he knew it was her. His response? Oh, it was definitely her. The face tattoos are pretty recognizable. We definitely don't get paid enough for this. Well, hope you guys can enjoy at least a day off of work and you don't have to deal with people like this, unless you just have family members like this, but that was kind of an interesting batch of stories for today, and like I said, a lot of you who comment on a lot of my videos will likely get a lot of notifications over the next few weeks. I'll probably start in my older videos and make my way forward, so if you've commented on recent videos, I probably won't get to those for a little while. But it should be fun to travel through all of this old stuff, so thanks to everybody for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.